Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to welcome you, Fiona. We're absolutely thrilled to have you join us today. Firstly, I'll provide a little bit of your background for the people listening in. Fiona spent many years working as a rural midwife, and she's an award-winning midwife at that, having been awarded the New South Wales Excellence in Midwifery Award in 2015, and she brings her wealth of nursing experience to her writing. Her books, which there are over 40, mostly slot into the contemporary romance genre and are fabulous for those readers who like a good, happy ending. And she's also written a non-fiction book, Aussie Midwives, in which 19 midwives across Australia share their incredible stories with Fiona. And today she's here to talk about her latest release, The Bush Telegraph, which is this lovely read here.
I've got one too.
Hold this one up. The Bush Telegraph, which is a follow-on from a previous novel, The Baby Doctor, but I haven't read The Baby Doctor, and it's beautiful to enjoy just as a standalone read. I've had the pleasure of reading it and found it very enjoyable and engaging, kind of like the book equivalent to a chick flick, fast-paced fiction, romance, heartbreak and drama, but it's so much more than that. We see a fair bit of the practical midwife in Fiona come through in her descriptions of the characters, especially Maddie and her task as an outback nurse, and her descriptions of the landscape make me want to go on a road trip around Australia. But enough from me. I'm going to now ask Fiona a few questions. First of all, Fiona, would you be able to provide an outline of the story to set the scene for everyone who may not have read the book yet?
Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thank you, Kathy, for having me. It's been lovely chatting to you while we've been organising all this. And thanks to all these people. We've got 10 people in the meeting, which is just delightful. So today I'm going to talk a lot about the Bush Telegraph, which came out on the 1st of September for Penguin Random House. It's my 8th book for Penguin Random House, and it's been really, really lovely to really get into a large format contemporary fiction like this book. So the actual Baby Doctor, it's about a young mum who had a baby when she was just 20, and she had an unhappy relationship at that time and in a small town called Spinifex. So she's gone back to Spinifex to prove she's got what it takes to run this medical centre now. She's not anybody who needs to lean on people. She's an independent woman with a lot of really good skills, and she wants to take it back and show Spinifex that she's actually a force to be reckoned with. But everything's changed. Pub's gone. The new colleagues that she thought would welcome her expertise were actually really looking forward to retirement. And her daughter that she's brought with her, who's 11, is not really thrilled to bits because, you know, we all know about going into year 6 and you really want to be the senior person at school. You've been going there all your life. This is your chance to be, you know, someone of account, and all of a sudden she's uprooted and taken to this outback, stinking hot place with barren land and people she doesn't know, and will she even be able to keep up with the school people? She doesn't, you know, she's got a lot of concerns. So it wasn't quite the bonus Maddie thought it would be when she hit Spinifex. So this is the story of her, of the town, of a man who really needed to meet someone just like Maddie to help him lift into the good in people and to start to regain some of his, I suppose, just faith that there's good out there and that people are not all out to get him, I suppose. And then we've got lots of medical stuff too, because as a midwife, I always have a baby. Every book, always have a baby. Even if it's a toddler somewhere stuck away, I still have a baby. But so there's a baby, there's medical scenes, there's the flying doctor, there's the incredible scenery that we get, which we'll talk about later. And yeah, it's an all-round story of someone coming home, finding a place that she's really going to call home.
Yeah, you really get that feel through the story that this is about the characters and finding where they belong and their place. Um, so that comes through quite clearly. But you wrote The Baby Doctor almost 3 years ago. Why did you feel compelled to write the rest of her story, of Maddie's story in the Bush Telegraph?
As a midwife, I had a lot to do with young mums, so I'm actually super admiring of young mums. They do a lot of their parenting on their own. They do a lot of their parenting feeling like people are watching them, and I have so much admiration how they love their children to death and then go on and really make themselves someone their kids can be proud of. And the group that I used to be part of was called Tim Tams, which is Teenage Information Mornings, teens as mums. And we had young women from 14 to 22 in Tim Tams, and we'd meet once a week, and I'd do all the antenatal stuff. And when people went to have their babies, hopefully I'd try to be there. And then when we went back to Tim Tams, we'd draw their timeline on the wall so they'd be able to talk about what happened during their labour. And it was a really good chance for everybody to ask questions and for them to have questions answered. So I had this amazing group of wonderful young women that I just adored. And so Maddie was like, I haven't told Maddie's story. I need to tell Maddie's story. And even though it's 11 years later, it's all about those things that affect you when you're young.
And you do see it come through with Maddie, with her drive to succeed, her drive to educate herself, so that I think she's got more diplomas on her walls than, people have had hot dinners. If there's a qualification to get in midwifery or nursing or anything, she'll go out there and get it. And so now she's sort of taking up that role of being a manager and sort of organising the medical centre, which is a really big step when you think about what she's been through in the past.
Yeah, so she's building her toolbox to take it out back. And even if she didn't realise this was what her plan was, this is what she was doing. She was creating a network of support for herself with her own knowledge. And when I travel out back, I go to see the remote health centres, and the women and men out there just amaze me. I was talking to a woman at Windora, and I said to her, what do you do when you're here by yourself? And yes, there is an enrolled nurse or a nurse assistant somewhere in town who'll come and help you, but someone has a heart attack out the front. How do you manage that? How do you deal with the stress of saying you're the only person for hundreds of miles? And she was like, I follow procedures. I follow my protocols. I do what I need to do. I believe that person's better off because I'm here than if I wasn't here. And I've got the backup of the telehealth and the flying doctor. And it's like, you're a hero. You're an absolute hero. It's enough stress in a hospital when you can press a button and help comes, let alone to be out there and manage the situations that they manage. And I wanted to get that across in this book.
Yeah, and it comes across loud and clear. Like, I didn't know about the telehealth where you actually have a doctor coming in via camera and looking at your patient while you're working on them and helping them. And I didn't realize that they had all of that. And it's amazing, the strength of resilience. And like you said, the networks, building the networks. And as you go through the book, you see the networks build with more and more of the remote doctors and the flying doctors and all of those kind of support networks that she develops and she connects with. And it's just lovely to see.
Yeah, and I think also the fact that Maddie's a bit astounded that the town is accepting of the fact that they don't have resources. That it's like, oh, yeah, well, we chose to live here, so. But she's like, no, everyone deserves to have access, even if it's infrequent. It needs to be consistent. So, that was really lovely to look into that a bit too. And obviously that's out of my scope of practice. I was a rural midwife. So I worked at a small rural hospital, not a remote health centre. So I had to talk to people about that. I had to get things checked by people who are friends of mine who are doctors. And it was just fascinating.
Yeah, I was going to ask about your research that goes with it, because you are drawing on so much experience of your own as a midwife and a nurse. But how much research did you require to put into the aspects you weren't familiar with?
So with the scenes like the cardiac scene, so there's someone having a heart attack. I wrote the scene very loosely, and then I sent it to my friend and said, have we got any drugs that we can, and you have to be really careful, because if you stick drugs in there, people just start switching off. It's like, I don't understand that. Yeah. So it's a fine line between information and creating a scene, and the fact that you're going to have doctors reading it and you want it to be true as well, and it's got to be right. And even though treatments change, basic treatments don't. So yes, there is research. Yes, there is confirmation that I've got it right. And you can't be lazy there. So
No.
yeah. And it's one of those things that, it's part of the fun is doing the medical research. But of course, the better research is the travel research and meeting the people, and just getting inspiration from the incredible landscape and stuff that's around us.
Yeah, and speaking of the landscape, there's something. I'm a coast girl. I've been a coast girl most of my life. I've never been further west than Dubbo. So there's some terms in the landscape, and there's a particular term throughout this book that I hadn't heard of, and it plays an important role. Is it mesa? Is it? Yeah. So the mesa. Can you explain to everyone what they are and what their significance is?
Well, if I just read you a bit, it'll actually be a way to give you a little trip into the book, just to have a listen, and also to explain what it is. So this is on Connor's property, and he's taking them onto the top of one of these mesas out in the plain. So abruptly they were on top. The mesa stretched ahead until it finished in a drop-off, and you could see the view again. But up here on the plateau, mustard-coloured earth stretched in front of them. So the mesa is actually what's left. Everything else is washed away. So these mesas are just left. So he's climbed up the jump up on top of the mesa, and sparse clumps of coarse grass poked from bare soil. Silvery black stunted trees, their rough bark trunks at right angles to the ground, or leaning back, or leaning sideways. Sometimes their trunks in full circles, crouched like gnarled acrobats in a bizarre dance troupe of frozen figures. What sort of trees are they? Another sort of acacia. They're blown by the wind and bend into shapes. Sometimes they fall over and then grow again from where they fell. Some people even take small ones and make them into bonsai. Maddie shook her head and felt the joy of seeing something wonderful and unexpected expand in her chest. Awe was good for you, a scientific fact. And she felt awe for this incredible landscape that sat above the world like a floating island or a lunar landscape. So yeah, the mesas are just amazing. And the really cool thing is that on the top of the mesas are all the boulders that support the soil. And as they erode, the boulders fall down and lay around the bottom of the mesas. And they get smaller and smaller and smaller until there's nothing left but the pile of rocks. So this is between Longreach and Winton, or Winton and Boulia. And it was just, fabulous place.
I so want to go and check out what they are, because to me, when you say a lunar landscape, that is it's so totally foreign. I can't even imagine it in my head.
I'll have to send you a photo.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess I have to look it up and find out what they look like, so I can sort of get my head around that experience. Throughout the book, though, there is a theme that comes through. You have the beautiful characters, you have the beautiful scenery, that the descriptions are lovely, but there is a theme that runs through, and what caught my attention about this theme is that it picks up from a whole different viewpoints depending on the characters. And so that's the theme of domestic violence. And as a midwife, obviously that's a a trigger point. Pregnancy is quite often a trigger point for domestic violence. But what I found interesting was the stages which you represented in different characters. So you've got Maddie, the survivor, moving on with her life and learning to trust. And then you've got the perspective of a partner who's falsely accused of violence. And also the potential character, the character with the potential to develop violence towards his wife. So I took that was the notion of choice and the consequences of choice. And without going into too many spoilers, can you just share your thoughts on what was happening there?
What I like about the way domestic violence is addressed in this book is you don't actually see any. It's all, ramifications or hints or just, the book itself is called the Bush Telegraph. So we're talking about rumours and a little bit about gossip and a little bit about, how things get passed on. And I loved the fact that Maddie has stepped up and yes, moved on and made choices, but actually just avoided relationships as well up until this time. So that's 10 years. Her daughter's, 10, 11. And it's just, yeah, she's taken risks by thinking about Connor, who's a man she found on the side of the road. He'd been hit by a car on her way into Spinifex. And it turns out, and she helps him back to his house to recover. And turns out that it's his son, his own 11-year-old son, who'd actually run over Connor. So there's obviously something going on with that family and she doesn't understand. So she is attracted to Connor, and through the beginning of the book, he is attracted to her too. And she's just starting to give herself some leeway to maybe think about it, having a relationship with Connor. And then the gossip comes in. So by the time she and Mrs. Cook were admiring their handiwork, Connor was back. Oh, I do love a man with a chainsaw. Mrs. Cook's delighted comment and rubbing hands made Manny laugh. They all stood back to enjoy the drama as Connor, ear protections on, began trimming the heavier branches obscuring the glass. Mrs. Cook has a shop and there's a big tree blocking the light. The chainsaw stopped and Connor dragged the large branch aside. His magnificent muscles flexed as he worked, shifting branches as though they were twigs and not the thigh-sized lumps of wood that they were, and generally making Maddie's stomach tighten. She sighed. Such a shame about Connor and all that nasty gossip. Maddie looked at the woman in surprise. What gossip? The chainsaw started again while Mrs. Cook looked pensively at the man cutting through her branch. The chainsaw stopped and another branch moved away. He's never been anything but pleasant to me, Mrs. Cook exhaled. Maddie stared at the woman. She didn't know if she wanted the noise to stop or start again or not. She fought with the urge to ask what. Told herself this is just gossip, not fact. The chainsaw stopped. Broke his mother's heart, that did. It was only a brief pause this time as Connor began to cut the larger pieces into smaller ones. Maddie waited impatiently for the saw to stop. In the end, Mrs. Cook supplied the answer without a request as soon as the noise stopped. He's always maintained his wife lied and he never hurt her. I believe him, but it did go to court. The chainsaw started again. The words sank in and the chainsaw turned into buzzing in her ears. Maddie thought she was going to lose her silver-side sandwiches right then and there. The lump climbed her throat and her sight went dim for a moment as a wave of desolation she had no reason to feel swamped her. She'd picked another one.
Wow, it's so amazing how much gossip can hurt people without intending to. It may be well-meaning, it may be well-placed, but at the end of the day, what we find out is that perhaps that isn't exactly, she may believe him, but just even the gossiping is a way of casting doubt on the person's character.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was very well handled. Like you said, you didn't see any violence in the storyline as such, but everything was either it's already happened or it had the potential to happen. And I do feel that it was addressed really, really well. Now moving on to a lighter topic. You have recently won the Romance Writers of Australia's Ruby Award for Contemporary Romance Book of the Year, The Desert Midwife. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Thank you. Well, that was really, really exciting. I've been a member of Romance Writers of Australia for 29 years, and that the awards night has always been like everyone goes along and cheers everybody. And in 2009, I had nominated for this award, and that was really amazing. But this year, The Desert Midwife, being a contemporary romance, so the bigger book, was set in Uluru, and I had an amazing time again going on the research trips. My second time to Uluru, but also writing a story about Indigenous health and writing about a woman who was actually in my mind, one of the midwives I did in Aussie Midwives, travelled from Alice Springs to Katherine every week, and she visited all the communities. This is true. Visited all the Aboriginal communities, the stations, people who had antenatal care needed. She would do that all week, and then she'd come back down to Alice Springs at the end of the week. So what a Monday to Friday job.
Gosh.
Amazing woman. So that was what I wanted to have my heroine do in Desert Midwife. And the problem is that I wanted to make sure it was all true. It was a lot to do with the Inangu people. It was a lot to do with the mysticism and spiritualism of Uluru. So there was a lot of communication between myself and a wonderful lady who deals with the Indigenous language groups. And the ladies actually read parts of the book before it went to final editing. And one of the things they came back with was, could I move a scene where I had a young child hit by a motorbike and broken arm in a village, in a community, and they wanted me to move it out of the community onto a road so that it wouldn't bring bad luck to the community and a child wouldn't get hit just by that concept and the idea. I was like, sure, I can do that. That's great. I would hate to have written the book and made them feel that way. So it was just little things like that were amazing about The Desert Midwife. And it was an amnesia book, which is odd and wonderful, and I loved it. And yeah, it was just such a thrill when it actually won the Ruby. I was beside myself. And because we don't have conference, we were in our lounge room, and my husband was in his pajamas, and he'd actually been to bed, and he'd actually got up at 7 o'clock. And I was all dressed up, and he was in his pajamas, and we're sitting there, and it was on the television on YouTube. And it went for an hour and 10 minutes, the whole awards ceremony, so all the different awards, a bit like the Oscars. And I had a little bottle of champagne, well, a big bottle of champagne, and some strawberries. And I was sort of sipping my way through it. And so ours was the last category. And when they said, and they were really great, they were talking about contemporary fiction has, social issues, and it has all these different things. It's not really easy to write because it's accessible to everybody, and everybody can pick you up if you do something wrong. And anyway, it was a really nice speech. And then they went, Fiona McArthur and the Desert Midwife. Was like, yay! So yeah, it was very exciting. And my husband said, oh, that's wonderful. Then he went back to bed. And I stayed up playing Facebook all night because I was over the moon. It was really lovely. But somebody asked me if that was a highlight of my writing career. Well, yes, it is. But I'd have to say, getting the Aussie Midwives non-fiction book with all these amazing midwives who I will people through all my fiction books was probably the biggest highlight.
It's certainly, from my understanding, it's got lovely reviews and things on it. So I think we do have that one in our library as well too. So if anyone's interested, just look online and see if you can reserve a copy. It's so lovely that you've kind of managed to compile all the factual kind of information in, but in a relatable kind of way so that people, and I guess that's the joy of contemporary fiction, is that we can relate to it.
Cheering for the characters, and I've had people say to me, I really understood now how that nurse felt while she was presented with this situation, and how So that's what I want. And I want people like you to fall in love with the place and want to go out there, you know. And when you get to Winton, find out from the council how you get out to rangelands, because there's red dirt tours will take you out there, and it's just worth it. So I want everybody to go out there and travel. And yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's beautiful that you've been able to capture that, and not only capture and write beautifully, but you also have been doing this up until recently. You were working as a midwife, as a
Yeah.
nurse, and writing all those books and raising your own family. And I just have to say, how do you do that?
Yeah, I was a part-timer, so that helps. But yeah, we had 5 boys. We had 4 and 4.5 years, and then 7 years later, we had another delightful boy. And it's yeah, it's you've just got to carve out a place. If you want to write, you have to carve out a time that's yours. And my time turns out to be before 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning. And even with no children in the house now, it's still really the time when my brain works much better and where I can actually lose myself in the characters. And if you do a little bit of writing early in the morning, you don't feel bad the rest of the day that you haven't done your work, because you've already got it out of the road. So I
Definitely.
just love it.
Yeah, and it shows, like your face just glows when you talk about
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
when you're writing, do you like to plot everything out, or do you just fly by the seat of your pants and let the characters develop as they go through?
Yeah, yeah. So I start a book with a scene. I know the scene. I don't really know the characters. I see the scene, I write the scene, and then I learn the characters as we go. It took me 10 years to finish a book. So if anyone's trying to write their first book, it was because I started lots of little books and didn't realize that I don't really know a book until I've got to the end. And then I can go back to the beginning and write it properly. So I, would just keep adding to it. And now I understand the characters and where they're going. I can understand how to. So you could probably say that it's the biggest plot in the world, because I don't actually plot anything. And when I get to the end, that's when I finish my book. So yeah, I'm a pantser. I have no idea. I don't even care about names. I just pick them out of the air. And if I decide I don't like it later, I just swap and. So yeah, I'm a little bit fast, and it's a bit like being a mum of 5 boys. You can do everything fast, and it's just like, it's not 1,000,000% great, but it's all in the passion and the joy of the moment. You can fix the rest later.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's what editors are for as well, too,
Yeah.
to kind of bring it all back into line.
They're not as sympathetic as editors of smaller books, because they've got great big books to work with. So I needed to make sure I went back more than once or twice and just got it all smooth. But it's such a joy to have like that, being able to detail lots of characters. In the Bush Telegraph, there's the 2 nurses, and they're real people to me. So we've got Rita, who's got blonde hair and is quiet and a bit sort of ditzy, and her last name's Munro, and she's like, yes, Rita as in Munro, as in Marilyn. So she's actually really sweet. And then you've got Phyllis, who was in the army as a nurse and has got really short silver hair and is really sort of stern and absolutely hates the fact that she's not going to get retirement payout now because Maddie's come here. And they're evolving to the point where, Phyllis is the one who's there for Maddie when she needs her. And I just love that growth and change in characters.
And it kind of goes back a little bit to how, you were saying that Maddie was amazed at how resigned the town was that they didn't have facilities. The
Yeah.
fact that they had this brand new medical centre with all this new equipment, but Phyllis and Rita hadn't actually been trained in how
Yes.
to use the equipment and
Yes.
how to use the computer. So it was causing them a lot of angst and stress
Yes.
and
Yeah.
upset in their workplace.
Yeah. So I was a midwifery educator, and there was a lot of changes in the last 10 years of my time, with computers and with patients' notes going online, and I was working with a lot of ladies my age. And we only just started to have our first trainee midwife 5 years ago, So we hadn't actually, it was us for that 30 years. so it was difficult, and it was difficult for people who don't use mobile phones or don't use email to start to learn how to use email, because everything came in by email. And that's why I was so sympathetic to Phyllis, because it was just such a horrid, like they lost all their notes, their patient notes, except she kept them, you know.
Oh, and it's lovely. And so finally, just two more things I have to ask, and then we'll throw it over to questions. Do you have a favorite book or author that has inspired you?
Yeah, look, I really love the Outlander series with Diana Gabaldon. They were, when I read those books, it was like, well, the first book really was the one that really connected with me. I love that. I love the idea of the stuff that I write being transported back in time. So that's something that I'm working on at the moment on my Time Travel Midwife series and I will get it done eventually once I stop all these deadlines. But yeah, I was always a Wilbur Smith person. I was always a Dick Francis person. Modesty Blaise was my absolute hero. So I really like powerful women who know where they're going and stand on their own, but know how to be caring about other people. So yeah, that's sort of where I sit with my reading.
So you pretty much described Maddie then. So
yeah.
Yeah, and maybe a lot of youth coming through in
a lot of my heroines are a bit like that.
And finally, what do you hope readers will take from the Bush Telegraph?
Look, I want them to have an exciting, there's a little bit of drama. I want you to appreciate the scenery and think, oh, I wouldn't mind going out there. I want a little bit of insight into how amazing these outback people are, the health workers and even the town workers, and how different it is from what the majority of us know. But most of all, I want people to step back from that and say, yes, there's basic kindness out there. Yes, the world is a good place, and there's strong, amazing, ordinary people who do extraordinary things. And I want you smiling when you put the book down.
And I'm smiling.
Well, that's lovely.
It's lovely, and what a lovely thing to take out of a book if you're going to read anything that especially during this time, something that ends nicely and uplifting and inspiring. Thank you very much for bringing that to us.
Kathy, that's lovely of you to say that.
Now, does anybody have any questions? I've rattled on a little bit, but if you feel like I'm just going to check the chat box and see if there's anything in there. I haven't seen anything pop up, but feel free to unmute your microphone, pop your hand up. There is the option to raise your hand in some place, some devices. You can raise your hand to ask a question, but
I see the hand.
Yeah, so you can raise a hand if you'd like to do that, and we'll be able to see that you'd like to ask a question.
And are you trying to?
Maybe I need to unmute everybody. Hang on. It looks like someone was trying to talk. Let me go back to that. Let's see if I can find it now. Things are everywhere. Okay, I can probably just go through and unmute everybody and see how we go. Nope, not going to let me. I think everybody must have them muted from their end. But feel free if you do have questions, and even if you think of them after the event, please let us know, and we'll certainly pass them on.
If you pop them on the Facebook part where you had your Facebook, there was a Facebook link there. I dropped in and said hello, looking forward to coming. If you pop it on there, I will answer you there.
Lovely, lovely. So for those who are on Facebook, we are recording this, and hopefully we'll get it up onto YouTube. If not, it will be on our Facebook groups for programs and events. So you just need to join into that group where you just agree to our terms and conditions. But you're more than welcome to drop in there. We'll pop the recording up as soon as it's available. Somebody's saying that they will stay muted as the budgie is very noisy in the background.
Go the budgies.
Go the budgies.
Were you trying, Anne? Anne, were you trying to talk? I thought you looked like you were trying to do something there. Anne down there, but no. Hello, Bobby. Hello, Anne.
Hi. Yes, budgies are more than welcome to have a little bit of a tweet and a join in as well to it. It is a very rural author talk as well too, so there's lots of birds obviously in the country and probably ones I've never even heard of before.
I saw 3 oyster catchers this morning on the beach, so yeah, it was
what's an oyster catcher?
It's a little black bird. There was a man walking a dog and he said to me, "Oh, look, there's 3 oyster catchers." I'm like, okay.
Oh. I don't know what that is.
They're little black birds apparently, so that was
okay.
Oh, some of them are. All right, well, it doesn't look like anybody can actually chat. Bobby, are you going to say anything? No.
I'm staying quiet. Actually, he's stopped for a moment, but he loves the sound of voices. And because I live alone, there's not much conversation going on. So as soon as I'm online, he thinks it's his party and he joins in. And he's very loud over the microphone. So I usually stay muted, but he's mesmerised at the moment. So
it's lovely to hear your voice, Bobby.
Thank you, and I really enjoyed the talk. Thank you so much. It was really, really interesting.
I'm pleased. Borrow the book out of the library.
I will. Thank you. Yeah. Is it on Amazon too, on Kindle?
Yeah. And it's in audio. It's on audio book as well. It's
cool.
It's out there.
Yeah, we do have some copies. It is a bit reserved at the moment, but I'll donate my copy in there so that it'll be another one in the system as well too. I usually pass them around to family and friends and then I pop them in, but I think we might just pop this one straight in so that people can get the benefit of it. And we do have lots of your other books, Fiona, in our library system as well too. And if anybody's looking for a gift or anything and you feel like you want to buy this either for yourself or for somebody as a gift, just remember we have lovely independent booksellers on the coast that would would really love to support. Okay, well, if nobody has any more questions, I'd just like to say a very, very big thank you to you, Fiona, for taking the time out from your holiday today to come and talk to the people on the Central Coast. And hopefully next time you have a book out, we'll be able to have you come and visit in person.
I would like that.
Holiday
that would be
to the
wonderful.
coast. Oh, it would be so lovely to have you. And for everybody else, thank you so much for joining in.
I really appreciate it. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Bobby. And thank you, the other Anne, who we can't see, and KS and E.
We've got actually Kincumber library staff we have big screens up in our library, so I'm hoping that they've put this up on the screen, and so we're not noisy. They can put the closed captions up, and people can listen and see our authors come and visit. So hopefully, we've managed to get across to a few people. And thank you very, very much. And
absolute pleasure. Thanks.
Oh, we need to get a photo before you go as well too. So everybody else, you can hang in the photo if you like, or I can chop you out if we need to. And it's fine. The book, when you're showing it, it looks like it's back to front, but it's actually the right way around. So I'm just going to do a new snippy. Okay. Let's see how we go. Big smiles.
I feel like I'm frozen.
I know, it's funny. There we go.
Beautiful.
So yeah, we've got you there smiling with your book, and as soon as I can get the recording up, we'll have it on our Facebook group or hopefully on YouTube. They just need to go through our manager's approvals first. But thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you at the next one.
Bye everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.